So today we are going to get started with our storage module, and that is our very first topic of the storage, where we're going to talk about some of the storage basics, its protocol, and its terminology, right? So let's get started with our storage discussion. So let's understand, why do we need storage, right? I mean, if you really think, right, why do we need storage? Because we always need a storage, right, to save the data, right? Ultimately, it's all about data. But where do you store your data? Because you want to get access to your data at any point in time, right? You want to make sure that your data is not get lost, right? You're not losing your data. And that is where storage technology gets really important, because it helps you to avoid unscheduled downtime of the business, right? I mean, just imagine, if you do not have defined your storage technologies which can help you to avoid any kind of downtime, right? Then I don't have access to my data, then what is the point of all this technological uh, stuff, right? Because ultimately, either you talk about networking, you talk about any other technology, migration technology, talk about disaster recovery, whatever it is, what is the end goal of those all these technologies? They're helping us to get our data at any point in time, right? From anywhere we can just get the data accessibility without causing any downtime, right? So that is what we need, a storage solutions, right, which help us to avoid unscheduled downtime of the business. And another important thing, we need a storage solutions which can provide 24 by 7 continuity services to business. Just imagine you're trying to log into your banking subsystem, right? And suddenly bank come and says that for next 5 days we are not available, or maybe our banking system is under maintenance, right? Or maybe you can't get access to your bank accounts, right? You can imagine the scenario, right? How the world would be then, right? What if the bank come and says that today for next 5 days we are getting into maintenance, right? And what if you have to make I mean, every day we make a lot of transactions, right? So obviously, storage plays a very important role in your entire data center infrastructure. So as we have already talked about, that servers is one of the pillar of your data center solutions. And when we talk about server, we talk about compute stuff, right? And when we talk about compute, we talk about CPU and memory that is contributed by the server. The second and another bigger pillar of the data center, what we discussed last few weekends, right? That was networking, right? If I have a data but I don't have a network connectivity, how will I go and access my data? Because at the end, it's all about my data accessibility, right? And that is where we leverage the networking stuff, which can help us to fetch my data, access my data from anywhere in the world, right? And then the last but not the least, where exactly my data is stored, right? At the end, if you try to understand this picture, everything is driven by the data, right? You have a compute memory, you have a network, but your data itself is not there. Then what will you do with the servers who is doing the processing? What will you do with the networking, right? So ultimately, the point here is that storage is another biggest major pillar of your any data center solutions, which help us to avoid any kind of unscheduled downtime of the business. And it also help us to create that business continuity. And I think that is what our storage is all about it, right? So what is exactly storage is? So when you look at the storage is a bulk system. It's a disk of array where we can save, store the data. See, I mean, when you talk about the storage, right? So storage has many, I mean, if you really go and talk about the storage has many technologies, right? Obviously, because we are talking about vSphere, we are talking from the enterprise data center perspective, right? But even if you talk about our day-to-day life, right? I have a data in my mobile where it's getting stored. If I don't have a hard drive, I don't have a disk space to save my data, then where will I store my data, right? So ultimately, we need a storage subsystem where we can save or store the data. Now, what are the different kind of solutions we have to save and store the data? That is what storage technologies are all about it, right? But ultimately, it's a subsystem. It's a system which help us to save and store our data. Storage device is an any computing hardware that is used for storing, sharing, and extracting data, files, and objects. So obviously, when we talk about the enterprise data centers, right? When we talk about storage arrays, uh, in fact, today also there are job roles which talk about SAN network, SAN administrator. You might have heard about. I have a storage team in my organization, right? Same like network team or server team, right? Anyway, those teams are getting eliminated over the period of time, and you will see that there's a very less demand of something called storage administrator, right? Because we are heading towards, we have already shifted toward the world of software defined data center, right? Where everything is software driven. But still, if you go 10, 15 years back, the era when there was no storage, software defined storage, right? Like yesterday we talk about networking stuff, right? So when there is no software defined networking, that is where what we used to have. We used to have a big giant bulk storage coming from Dell, HP, IBM, Hitachi, right? And these storage is what? They are very high computing subsystem, right? They're also, it's a hardware only, but it's a hardware design to help you to store, share, and extract your data files and objects. Ultimately, the data what is being stored in those devices. So these are also computer hardware only, but they are very high performance storage subsystem which can fetch the data, which can store the data at much higher speed, right? Now it says that storage aggregates the storage capacity, provides by drives, and provides block level and file level or object level access. I think this is what we're going to talk about today, because when you talk about the storage, right? Storage have a multiple technologies. Just to give you idea that you might have heard about something called DAS, direct attached storage. You might have heard about something called SAN, storage area network. You might have heard about something called NAS, network attached storage. And now we do see a lot of things like object storage, right? So ultimately, there are a different kind of solutions which the purpose is same, the end outcome is same, but the approach is different. And there are certain reasons behind it, right? That is what we'll try to understand as when we progress with the storage discussion, right? But ultimately, what storage does, it actually does the aggregation of your storage capacity. So when we talk about the RAID configurations, right? So you would have a single hard drive, right? But we will never ever have a single drive just to store and save my data. We will have a bunch of hard drives coming together and then giving us aggregate storage capacity. And RAID is one of the example of that, right? So we'll go and talk about a RAID as well. A storage device can hold and store information both temporary and permanently. It can be internal or external to a computer, server, or any similar computing device. So what this point says that your storage device, it could be, it can hold and store your information in a temporary format or the permanent format, right? And that's where we have a classification, something called primary storage and secondary storage, right? For example, your RAM is also storage and your hard drive is also storage, but the nature of the storage is different, right? The RAM, what happens is it just hold your temporary data. As when you reboot the system, the memory gets flushed out. That is what your primary memory is all about it. But whenever you want to store your data permanently, that is where we talk about the secondary storage, like hard drives, SSDs, and all those things, right? And this storage could be internal or external. So for example, when we talk about internal storage, take example of laptop itself, right? Laptop itself has its own hard drive. So this hard drive is inside your subsystem itself, right? Which is like we call internal storage. But when you talk about the USB storage, right? The USB external drives, what we have it, right? We can just plug it to the USB port and that become another storage device. So your storage could be internal or external, but ultimately it serves the same purpose, right? So now if you really see that in this particular diagram, which is a very simplified diagram, as you could see that. So this is my storage subsystem, right? Where I might be having a hard drives, I might be having a SSDs, a different kind of solutions in terms of saving and storing your data, right? So that would be your hardware construct. On top of that, you will have a servers, because ultimately your hard drives will reside inside your server, right? And that is what we have a server. And then what we do, we actually create some logical objects, right? So we create a logical drives, and these logical drives could be a different nature depending what purpose they are serving, right? It could be a block level device, it could be file level device, it could be your object level storage, right? And then we expose these devices to be consumed by my end user or application. It could be VM, which is consuming that storage. It could be a user desktop, which is consuming that storage, right? So that is the very simplified architecture of your storage, right? And I think that is what your storage is all about it, right? Now, as we said that we have a two kind of storage, right? So we do have a two kind of storage, and that is what we talk about it. So we do have a primary storage and we do have a secondary storage, right? So the primary storage, what it says that this storage device are designed to hold data temporarily and they're internal to the computer. These devices have a fastest data access speed, and the classic example is RAM and the cache memory. So we all know that there is a kind of storage what we have it, every subsystem will have it, right? And that is what RAM and cache. Your CPU, your central processing unit, will never ever go and talk to the hard drive directly, right? If it would have happened, then you would have not seen the performance what do we see today, right? So obviously we talk about RAM, we talk about L1 cache, L2 cache, L3 cache, which we have discussed during our CPU discussions, right? So that is where the nature of the storage is. So primary storage is majorly which is designed to hold your temporary data, and it will get flushed out as when you reboot the system. And this primary storage will always be internal to the computer, because it get attached to your PCI bus of the subsystem, and CPU should have access to it, a faster access to it, right? That is where, did you ever heard about external RAM? Did you ever heard about external cache? No. But then when we talk about the secondary storage, that is where this storage devices usually have a large storage capacity and store data permanently. So whenever we want to store our data permanently, that is where we talk about the secondary storage. And that is what your hard drive, SSDs, USB storage is all about it. And this secondary storage is obviously will be a larger into the capacity, right? Today we talk about 2 TB drives, 4 TB drives, 8 TB drives coming as an external storage. Such a large storage and from the capacity standpoint, right? But you ever heard about getting a 1 TB RAM as an external RAM? No, right? So that's where the purpose is different. The what you see, the attributes of this storage are different, and they're designed to serve a different purposes, right? And that is what your primary and secondary storage is all about it. Then we talk about the data types, right? So see, we talk about the data. That's what we need a storage, right? Why do we need a storage? We need a storage to save and store my data. But then what kind of data it is, right? So majorly we classify data as a structured data or as a unstructured data, right? Now, what is difference between structured data and unstructured data? So when you talk about the structured data is actually always organized in a very tabular format, right? So whenever you talk about any database solutions, right, which is actually, let's say you go to e-commerce website, you fill up, you provide all of your details, product details, and what are the purchases you have made it, right? So ultimately, it's a very structured way of organizing your data, where the moment I make a one SQL query to my database, I can fetch the data that what is the name of the user, what all the things he have ordered in the past few months or 6 months, or all the details about that user, right? So that is become a structured data. And majorly, whenever you talk about SQL Server, Oracle DB, or any database solutions, right? MongoDB or whatever kind of Cassandra, whatever storage solutions, whatever the database solutions you talk about it, whether it's your on-prem, whether it's your cloud-based database solutions, they will always be having a structured data, because their data is well organized. And that is where your database is all about it. But then there is something called unstructured data as well. As when this social media started evolving, so a new kind of framework started evolving it, right? And that is where the evolution of unstructured data happens, where data that does not have a defined model or framework. See, whenever we talk about Twitter feeds, right? Whenever we talk about Insta feeds, whenever we talk about multimedia files, images, which you keep uploading, or users are keep uploading on your Instagram stories or Instagram reels and Instagram stuff, right? Your LinkedIn, your Facebook, or maybe your YouTube, right? This is what we call unstructured data, because this data is not organized in a very structured format, in a tabular format, right? It's just a random data person are putting and adding those images, videos, and all those things, right? And that is where the emergence of unstructured data happens, right? And then this is what this example talks about it. So when you talk about the structured data, it is a very well organized, a very structured data in a tabular format. But then this is what the example of unstructured data, where data is being stored in a different format altogether, right? And I think whenever you talk about cloud solutions, you will see that there are different kind of solutions they gives you, right? They gives you structured database solutions for holding your structured data in a tabular format, and then you will also see a Cassandra kind of databases, like, which are designed to handle your unstructured data, your feeds, your Instagram posts, and all those things, right? So that is where we majorly classify data as a structured data and the unstructured data. And that is the reason you do see the evolution of another storage technologies called object storage, right? When you talk about Amazon S3, blob storage, what are these? right? We have been hearing about SAN technology, NAS technology for almost like 20, 30 years, right? But maybe in 90s, have you ever heard about, maybe early 2000, have you ever heard about something called object storage? No, it was not there because we did not have a need of that. But today, when we are in this world of social media, right? Obviously, the data type is different. The way data is being stored is different, and that's why we need a new solutions which help us to provide a very optimized way of storing and fetching that unstructured data, and that is what we call um, um, unstructured data is all about it. Now, what type of storage, right? So we talk about the storage, right? We talk about why do I need storage and what the purpose of the storage. But then there are a couple of other questions you should be asking to yourself before designing the storage solutions for your enterprise data centers. And few more questions is something I just try to write it down here. How to solve scalability problem of your data storage. So it's not something like your storage can be static in nature, right? So you really need to visualize it that next 6 months, 12 months down the line, how my data is going to grow, right? Because if you do not take that assumptions into the picture, then you might face a different set of challenges once you go and deploy your storage, right? So before doing this kind of storage deployments, you always want to assess the nature of the applications, right? And that is what it saves. It says that how do you solve the scalability problem of the data storage? What if my today I'm launching a new business, right? And let's say I just have a few thousands of users, but I don't know when this thousands of users can convert into millions of users. So do I have a storage solution considering those kind of growth in place, right? So that is what the question you should be asking it. How to provide connectivity across the globe? What if today my data, where I'm storing it, it's very local to one region, but I don't know where my users are coming from in the future? And what if my data is going to be distributed across the globe? Then how do I make sure that my data should be accessible across the locations, across the different locations of the globe, right? Can I make my data as a distributed data where the location should not be a concern for me because I'm considering that part as well, right? The third question, obviously, you should be considering that whenever you talk about the storage is how do I provide 24 by 7 high availability? It should not happen that, if you want to access the data, or maybe the banking subsystem come and says that if you want to access your banking stuff, the defined timeline is 9 to 5, right? If it would have been happened, then you can imagine the world how it would be, right? So you always want to make your data to be available 24 by 7 to your customers, to your clients, right? And what kind of solutions you deploy to make sure that you make this data available 24 by 7. But at the same time, when we talk about 24 by 7 high availability, you need to understand how do you design your storage solutions to make it highly available so that there is no single point of failure, right? And that's where a lot of storage discussions, storage technologies plays a very important role in achieving this kind of objective. The last but not the least is how do I provide high performance and ease of management, right? I have taken care of all this stuff, but my storage is damn slow. The moment I the moment I try to make a transaction through my banking website, what my bank has given me, it's keep rotating for next 10-15 minutes for every transaction. If that would have been case, then do you really think those banks would have grown up? Today I'm trying to make a purchase from any e-commerce website, and the moment I open up the website, it takes at least 10 minutes to load the inventory, right? And when I place the order, it takes another 10 minutes, and right, and then the order is shipped, that takes another 10 minutes just to get the confirmation, which means 30 minutes just to place the order. If that would have been world, then do you really think you would have survived in that business? No, right? So that is where performance is also plays a very important role, because that is what is all about the user experience, right? So you always have to make sure that how do I define high performance storage, at the same time how do I define a ease of managing my storage data of my customers, right? Or in fact, the entire data center, whatever we have it. So how do I have a ease of managing my entire data storage? So these are the some of the questions is something we should be asking to ourselves whenever we go and design our storage solutions. In fact, the similar kind of question you should be asking during your server deployment, you should be asking during your network designing as well, right? Because these are the basic concepts we should be aware of it. So now let's talk about the type of storage, right? Which I was talking about it. So majorly, when you really see that the type of storage, what do we have it? So you might have heard about something called SAN storage, right? A storage area network, which is uh, used to be a, I mean, it is there, no doubt about it, but it is one of the critical storage technology. And I think, early days, if you go back, I have seen I've been into those days where I used to see the job opening very specific to SAN expert, very specific to storage admin or storage expert. And they just need a person who is actually a SAN expert, because the SAN itself is a complex technology, right? And that's where you might have heard a lot of job openings in the HP, Dell, Hitachi, because what are these companies are? They actually ship a very high speed, a large data store capacity of the storage subsystem, right? To hold the customer storage, customer data, right? And that is what this technology is all about it. SAN, which we call storage area network. So that's a one type of storage solutions is available in the market. The second kind of storage solution which is available in the market is NAS, what we call network attached storage, right? And network attached storage is have a different way of working. Actually, the implementation is different, the way you access the data is different. So ultimately they all serving the same purpose, giving you, helping us to save and store our data, but their approach to save and store the data, providing you the access to the data, is different, right? And that is where we have a different kind of solutions. The third, what do we have? It is direct attached storage, a DAS, right? And the last but not least, I think this is something, uh, you might have started seeing this HCI solutions, right? Hyper-converged infrastructure. And they started evolving in the last 10, 12 years. I think last 10 years, basically, where the HCI infrastructure started growing, right? Because that is a different kind of a solutions which serves a different purpose, right? So majorly when we see that, if you really see, majorly you will be seeing two kind of storage solutions. One is SAN and second one is NAS. So this and this plays a very important role in terms of helping us to design our storage subsystem, SAN storage and NAS storage. And that is what we're going to discuss. We're going to go and talk a little bit more in detail about what is this SAN, what is this NAS, how does this SAN is different than NAS, and how, what kind of level of access these two different solutions provides us in terms of accessing the data, right? So that is the evolution of traditional storage, right? So if you really see the storage is not something new, right? It is like a 50-year-old stuff, because I mean, whenever you talk about computer, right, ultimately it's a storage, right? If the data is not being stored somewhere, then what is the point of any technology? Doesn't make sense, right? So that is where, if we talk about it, the evolution of the storage, if you really see, it started with the internal storage, right? So it started with the internal storage where we used to keep the data local to the system, right? Then gradually the requirement changed, and then uh, the something called direct attached storage come, where you used to have a JBoard kind of stuff, right? A multiple disk attached to the system, and then you used to expand your storage capacity. But later on, the distributed data sharing evolved, where we don't want to keep the data local to the system. We want to have a data accessibility over the network. That is where your NAS came into the picture. And then the next evolution, what we have seen in the SAN, because SAN is solving a different purpose than NAS, right? And that's where the evolution of the entire SAN storage happens. And then we do see that object storage, right? The next evolution, what do you see? That is object storage. We talk about HCI solutions, right? And vSAN is just something, one of the example I try to put it here, but that is the evolution of the storage. If you look at the journey of the storage, right, it has been keep evolving, and that is what it's all about it, right?
If you have interest in learning VMware more in depth, not from an administration perspective, but from the architect or consulting perspective, then join our VMware vSphere Zero to Hero Data Center Expert program. This particular program has been highly rated by all of our learners. 100 plus careers have been transitioned successfully with our Zero to Hero Data Center Expert Deep Dive program with the 100% placement record. Now, what are the key highlights of this program? As you could see that it's India's first job-ready VMware learning program, which has a 70 hours of intense learning with the 80 plus hands-on labs. 40 plus scenarios would be presented to a learner as a challenge questions to assess their learning. We do have a mentors having a 15 years of experience and the certified professionals. You would be getting opportunity to have a one-on-one in-person doubt clarification session with the VMware mentor, and this particular Zero to Hero program will also preparing learners for a L3 or senior level profiles. Now we have transitioned many careers with our deep dive program, and you can see some of the feedbacks right here on your screen. These are the feedbacks what we have received from all of our successful learners who has transitioned their career with us. So what are you waiting for? If you want to become VMware expert or want to master this technology, then call us now today on the given number, or maybe drop us email on the provided email address. Thank you.